6 on October 8th. This is our October meeting of the Southwestern Vermont Union Elementary School District. Our first item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. So if everyone would stand, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Second item on the agenda is public comments. We will invite any members of the public who'd like to speak. They may have the liberty to mic. Seeing none, we're moving on to agenda item 3, which is our consent agenda. I do have a proposed amendment to make to the minutes. On page 3 of the minutes, line 26, or 23 rather, it notes Brownell, Murphy, and Sikora are the 3 SVU ESD members to the SVSU, and that should read Brownell, France, and Sikora.
Move to approve.
And one other amendment, Jerry told me that on page 1, line 14, there was not present at the meeting back in North Carolina.
Were you thinking of us though, Jerry?
I was.
Okay,
I said,
thank you. So with those 2 changes in there, Dick made a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
And again, this is a motion to make those modifications to the minutes. So there's a first and second. Any further discussion about modifying the minutes as outlined? Hearing none. All those in favor of modifying the minutes as outlined, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And the minutes are so modified. So may I please have a motion to approve the consent agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
I hear it from Dick and I hear it from Chayla, first and second. Any discussion on that? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And the consent agenda passes. Thank you. Agenda item number 4 is finance. We do not yet have the September treasurer's report. That will be posted once it's completed. An updated copy of the August treasurer's report was just handed out. So folks can have a moment to look at that, but as soon as someone feels comfortable, I would entertain a motion to accept the treasurer's report as distributed tonight.
Move to accept the treasurer's report for August
Second.
31st.
I've heard Dick Francis the first, Cindy Brownell is the second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the treasurer's report for August as published, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any against? That's the other question. Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you. Next up, I'm going to invite Director Gordon up to the mic to speak to the school resource officer's proposal that we received from the Bennington Sheriffs. And Sheriff Schmidt is in the audience tonight to discuss Pownell and Shaftesbury. So Director Gordon, if you could please take us through what the proposal is, but if you could also speak to how this fills in the gaps that were left from the Bennington Police Department proposal, and give us the full picture, please.
So as the board had asked at the last meeting, after that we had reached out to the Sheriff's Department to ask if they would be willing to come in and discuss what options they might have available to serve both Pownell and Shaftesbury. So Chad was kind enough to come in and meet with us and then agreed to put the proposal together that you have tonight. I don't want to speak to the details of that. I'll let you let him speak to any of that. But I mean, it's comparable to what was outside. Pricing is a little bit less than what it's actually Bennington PD. That's pretty straightforward.
Okay. So does anyone have any questions for Director Gordon before we invite Sheriff Schmidt to the mic? Okay. Sheriff, if you would, please.
Usually I get a hot seat, I don't get to stand. So thank you for entertaining the proposal. Back when the preliminary discussions came about with the school resource officer positions, we were kind of under the assumption that other agencies either didn't have the personnel or the interest to do that. So that has since changed, which is a great thing. But one of the requirements that had been put into the RFP was that the officer be level 3 certified. That creates a little bit of an issue for me because unlike the Bennington Police Department or the state police who can just add positions and the funding comes from taxpayer dollars, I don't have that option. So for me to have filled 5 positions when the RFP came out, it would have been difficult to do with level 3 certified officers. But in anticipation of knowing that we were going to have these positions available, we took the initiative during the summer to send 2 officers to not only the school resource officer, the initial certification, but also the advanced. So I currently have 2 officers that are certified as an advanced school resource officer by the NASRO. That was done at the Vermont Police Academy. So it's a national certification, and they have that. One is a level 3 certified officer who's been with me for a number of years and is active in both Shaftesbury and Pownell communities, and also throughout the county. The other officer that I've included both resumes in the packet that I really think that you ought to take a look at and maybe reconsider your requirement of the level 3 certification. His resume is there. He's also certified. He's been with me for a good number of years. He has military experience. He was an EMT with the Bennington Rescue Squad and is now with me full-time. And if there are any questions about level 2 certification, I do have a copy of the law that I could leave here and maybe you guys can peruse through it. I'm not really sure if everyone quite understands. I'm not sure if I quite fully understand, quite honestly, what all of the intricacies are, the difference between level 2 and level 3, but I can certainly provide you a copy of it. What a level 2 officer can do is pretty extensive, and in cases of emergency situations or if they observe a crime in progress, regardless of their certification or scope of practice, they can act immediately. So if there was an emergency here at the school, they would be able to react in a way that you would expect any police officer to do in that emergency. So their certification doesn't prevent them from doing those things. So I don't want to belabor this point, but if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to entertain them. Sure.
In a number of cases, we've hired folks over the years that, under the condition that they become certified at some level, whether it's Renee's position, for example, is that a thing that can happen here? Is this a long-term process to certification?
I think it's more important that we pick the right person regardless of that certification. There's nowhere in the legislation that was just passed several years ago that they be required to be level 3 to be a school resource officer. There's no requirement in the law. There's no recommendation of that by the Vermont Criminal Justice Training Council. And there's no requirement by the NASRO, or he wouldn't have been able to take the course and become certified. So I think we need to have the deeper conversation about why the board feels that it needs to be a level 3 certification versus looking at the person, their credentials, and if they're qualified for the position. I mean, I'd rather we do an interview, maybe a trial basis with the officer, see how you feel, if you feel he's qualified, and then go from there.
I have no particular axe on it. I was just, since that was what our RFP was about, I didn't know if that was a process that could be completed in reasonable time to meet the RFP. That's all. I have no.
Well, how did we get there? To the level 3 where that was built into the RFP.
So that was a conversation that and correct me if I'm wrong, I think that was a conversation that began with the old BSD when we were putting together the public referendum at the meeting, asking if folks wanted to fund that. I think that's where the level 3 certification started, but I couldn't tell you what the origin of that was or why that came to be. Did you have a clear recollection of that?
No, I don't have completely clear recollection, but I also know that I think it came from discussions with the Bennington Police Department because that's what their officers were at level 3. Yeah, I mean, when we met with the sheriff, one of the discussions we had for options is, the Bennington Police is only going to provide you this year with part-time officers in the 3 Bennington schools. So the options you have is you could accept a 3 and a 2 level officer and have them full-time in both Pownell and Shaftesbury. Or you could, and this is an option we discussed with the sheriff, contract for the 1 level 3 officer that he has and put them half day at 2 different schools and have the same level of coverage that you are, or essentially the same level of coverage that you're having in the 3 Bennington schools. We had extensive discussions with the difference between level 3 and 2, and I don't mean to speak for the sheriff, but in the case, the issue with it really comes more if someone is to be arrested, the level 3 officer has to supervise a level 2 officer doing it, or I don't know if I'm actually verbalizing that correctly.
So the list that we have from, and this is right in the statute, it's pretty extensive as far as what they can arrest for, but there's a provision in, it says, any level 2 officer may respond to calls regarding alleged crimes in progress and may react in the following circumstances if the officer determines that it is necessary to do any of the following. So regardless of their scope of practice, they can protect an individual in the presence of the officer from imminent infliction of serious bodily injury, provide immediate assistance to an individual who has suffered or threatened with serious bodily injury, detain or arrest an individual who the officer reasonably believes has committed a crime in the presence of that officer, or detain or arrest an individual who the officer reasonably believes has committed a felony under Vermont law. If a level 2 officer responds to calls regarding alleged crimes in progress or reacts to any of the circumstances described in this subdivision, and that response or reaction is outside their scope of his or her scope of practice, he or she shall call upon an officer certified to respond and assume law enforcement authority over the incident. So my deputy would then call their officer, another officer or deputy in my office to come and help them assist them with that arrest.
And does a level 2 and level 3 officer go through the identical training, or is there variation in that?
Yes and no. The level 3 certification is full-time. You're at the police academy for 16 weeks. It's an overnight stay. It's very militaristic. The level 2, you get a lot of the same courses, but it's more of, it's a commute. You spend a couple weeks at the academy. You have to come back up for additional classes throughout the year. You have a year to get a lot of the same classwork that the level 3 do in the 16 weeks that they're at the academy. So it'd be the difference between like an associate's degree versus a bachelor's degree. They get a lot of the same training, but not quite the same amount of certain things.
So I have a process question for Director Gordon, for the superintendent. If we were to consider bringing on an SRO who was a level 2 law enforcement officer, would we need to then put out a new RFP with these newly defined parameters of what we were willing to accept in our candidates?
Probably ask legal though, but
Yeah.
we do have clauses in there that we have the right to waive any informality in the
Okay.
process, so I think
And
that's probably.
I don't think it would have altered the outcome of the bid, because I don't see, if we had advertised at level, in the RFP, that level 2 was acceptable, that there would have been other parties that would have
Fair enough. Yep.
put a bid in,
Yep.
so I don't think it would have altered the result. And those are the two things that I think the attorney would point out to us. It didn't alter the outcome, and as Renee said, we do have provisions to accept alternatives.
All right. Yes.
I think, considering the fact that Pownell is sort of south, just the 6 or 7 miles, I would prefer full-time. I mean, not that we're anticipating, but I think just to be covered. We've had issues in Pownell, and we've had to call the state police and wait. I think if we have a gentleman right there, and I'm impressed with the level 2. I personally don't know where the level 3, what the difference is, but I think, and I don't know about Shasberry, but they're out farther, but I'm speaking for Pownell.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. If he's going to cover Shasberry and Pownell, he's going to get 4 hours on each one or split his day. He would have a long drive from Shasberry and have to drive all the way to Pownell to cover the time. So to me, that would be, it would take him a long time to get from one to the other.
One thing to consider, as the sheriff said, is it is going to be security is part of the process here, but it really is about relationship building with students and showing law enforcement in a different light that students may see them. So I'm glad that the sheriff included resumes in here, because it gives a little insight of what we, may be hiring, and because that is what needs to come out of this if we do this, is relationships with our students, with law enforcement that they would see in their community.
And I might add that the level 2 officer is actually our resident expert on truancies and has a conduit right into DCF to handle those types of things. And I'm not saying that is really a role as school resource officer, but they already have those relationships built not only with the state's attorney, but also with DCF. And he has worked throughout the county in that capacity.
Any other questions from the board?
So my question I have for Renee, I know I should have asked this before, that what is budgeted would allow full-time in both schools?
It depends on when we get started.
Okay.
Because we have 49,000.
Right, so it's going to be prorated, yeah.
Depending on what day we start, we have to see. We'll be close.
I can work within your budget.
Yeah.
We got it.
Yeah, and the board's going to need to realize that the budget impact of year 2 of this is going to be different than what we originally budgeted. So, because if Bennington grows their capacity and those become 3 full-time officers and you go 2 full-time here, that's going to need to be discussed at budget time so that we can continue this. But you will see an impact on the budget.
Maybe we should do a one-year trial and see how it works.
Well, and that's an interesting question. What would the board be agreeing to? What are the terms of the contract? Would it be
We
for?
actually don't have a contract.
Contract yet? No.
Okay.
This is the RFP, so then if your intent is to then would go forth and work out contract details
Okay.
that come back to be signed by the board.
Okay. So potentially we could make it for a year contract and see how it is
Yeah.
and roll there. Okay.
I mean, I'd be fair to both the Bennington Police Department and to the Sheriff's Department. They're going to spend resources to train these people. So ultimately, at some point, not to speak for the sheriff again, I'm going to be looking for more of a long-term commitment. And
I kind of already put the cart before that horse.
Yeah.
And trained my people, so it is what it is. Even if we don't, I would agree, and I would like to see that happen.
Yeah.
Not because of the financial aspect, but I think it will serve the community as well to have an officer in the schools, and I think that's the more important
Yeah.
piece. I get there's budgets and financial issues, but if it's year to year, most of my contracts are in that fashion, and we just deal with it. But
Okay.
the implications for the Bennington Police Department might be different, as if the select board approves these positions and they only have to come up with this much money, and then all of a sudden they got to come up with this much money to cover that cost. That might be harder for them.
Yep. Okay. So it sounds like the answer is that you could do a one-year contract.
So you need a motion to,
Well, we would. I would like to hear a motion to accept the proposal, but the floor is open for any. I suppose we don't need a motion to not take action on the proposal, but I would like to hear a motion that we accept the Bennington County Sheriff's Office proposal for the SROs.
I'll make that.
Second.
All right, Scott and Susan, thank you very much. Any further discussion on this?
It was Scott and Angie.
Scott and Angie, sorry. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And it passes. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sheriff. And lastly, the board has received a funds transfer from the Shaftesbury School. Director Gordon, anything else we need to say on that?
I don't know if Shaftesbury School Board, former Shaftesbury School Board members would have any additional information. I told my staff today and also reached out to the trustee who provided the cover letter. And he was able to share that the town trustees have management of an account that has about $31,000 in it. And annually, they turn over the interest earned on that money to the school to be used for whatever purposes they so choose. So the money comes to the board every year just for approval.
Okay. So can I please have a motion to accept this transfer of funds?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. First and second, any further discussion on this?
This is, and I don't want to think of it as, but is this directed to be put in a pool for Shaftesbury Elementary School?
Yes.
And that's what will happen?
Yes.
Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of accepting the funds transfer, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Very good, and it passes. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 5, committee reports. Chayla or Dick, which one of you would like to speak to the SVSU, please? Or Cindy? Cindy was there too?
I wasn't there.
Okay, so Cindy or Dick, which one would you like to?
Dick wasn't there either.
I can tell you that this is the second time I've decided to be out of town during one of those meetings, and it's the second time the same results.
Yeah.
So I was re-elected chair. Leon was elected vice
Vice
chair,
chair.
and Ray Molyneux becomes the clerk. Otherwise,
It was short and sweet.
Was it? All right.
It was determined that it had to, our attorney said they should reorganize. So they did have a reorganization. It began, I opened the meeting and did a reorganization of just like we would do at the March meeting because the board makeup had changed so much on July 1.
Sure. Okay.
and the only other issue was that superintendent's evaluation meets this Thursday.
All right.
At the central office.
Okay, great, thank you. The policy committee did not meet in October. That was canceled, so we'll next meet in November. We had discussed at the last SVU ESD meeting of creating a facilities committee for this board, given that we now have so many buildings to oversee. So Tony D'Onofrio is the chair, and that committee will be meeting on October 16th at 5:30 at the SVSU central office. There had been a request from Tony to for the board to empower the chair to approve any projects that had already been approved and budgeted by the previous boards that then comprised this board. I don't think that's necessary because, just based on conversation, because those actions have already been approved by the duly congregated boards at the time, all of those decisions flow through, so we don't need to take that extra step. So if they've been budgeted for, if they've been approved, those will move forward, and the committee will continue to oversee those.
And we'll pull that list from the budget. It says, there's some misconceptions about like what's been approved. If the budget has a specific project that was outlined in the budget process, then we'll have that information at the facilities committee meeting. Some of the decisions is that where it gets confusing, saying I have money in the budget, in a maintenance budget, say, for something, then that project may not have been specifically identified in the budget process. So that's what the work that the facilities committee is going to have to do after Renee informs us what the pool of that money really is.
Do we know who's on the facilities?
I'm not sure who Tony has appointed, no.
Okay.
I have a question.
I'm on it, along with Tony. I don't know who
I have requested to be on the facilities committee.
Great.
I didn't get any answer.
Yeah, and I asked as well, so that's why I wasn't sure if I'm supposed to be there.
Okay, I would ask anybody who has an interest in serving on that committee to follow up with Tony.
Yeah, and they're all public meetings. So.
Yep.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and because I think the problem is, if I understand it, we can't have 4 people. It has to be 3.
Because otherwise we have
Because
quorum
then
for
it's
this
quorum,
board.
right.
What Tony and I had chatted about, and I think maybe other members of this board, was to have a member from each of the towns
Right.
as a member of that board, but with a rotating attendance at the committee meetings,
Correct.
so as not to accidentally create quorum for this board.
And at the moment, there is nobody from Pownell.
Okay.
Right, no, but I think that was, so I think you had shown interest, I had shown interest, Dick had shown interest. And are we missing a school?
Tony, but he's.
Tony, right,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
So that's all 4, but we can't all 4 be at the meetings at the same time. So, because that's quorum.
Because otherwise we'd have quorum for this board.
And so we have to have like a rotation if
Yeah.
we're going to do it that way, if we're going to have 1 from each. So,
Well, you don't have to worry, this month I can't make it. It's the night before my eye operation, so
I
just send
see.
me the information. Otherwise, I will show up the next one.
Okay, great.
to be leading you around.
Yeah,
You gonna get a dog and a cane?
blind, leading the blind. Thanks.
Okay, great. So the next agenda item is number 6 for policies. So we have to warn policy 5600, which is the student freedom of expression in school-sponsored media. And basically that that policy, as it's written right now, just mirrors Vermont state law, which is 16 Vermont statutes annotated subsection 1623. Essentially, we can't.
There wasn't any point in printing the same letters and the same words in the same order as it's in statute.
Yep. And particularly because statute, it can be subject to change. We'll reference the statute without having to reference the words. So that's it. So I would accept the motion to warn policy 5600, please.
So moved.
Second.
Who wants to be the first on that?
I don't care.
Angie.
Okay, great, Angie. Very good. So first and second, any further conversation on that? Hearing none, all those in favor of warning 5600, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? It is so warned. All right, agenda item number 7, Principal Basic, the floor is yours.
Good evening. So it's a great feeling to be here tonight presenting to all of you as my first principal report to the SVU ESD. And I thank you for this opportunity, and I am proud to share the development and success of Molly Stark community. So as I begin the first 6 weeks of school, I'm proud for our learners, and they continue to learn and model the expectations of Molly Stark, being kind, respectful, responsible, and safe. Every morning, classrooms participate in morning meetings, and when learners greet one another, share, hear a morning message, and engage in activity. All staff members attend these meetings. Everybody has a classroom that they go to. So it's a whole school encompassed morning meeting. I will tell you one of the favorite activities that they do is called Hot Tamale, and it gets everybody engaged in an activity where they can stand up, be in their own safe space. They're going to get away from the tamale. They're going to go forward to the tamale. So it's a really fun activity that has been done as an activity. Staff recognition, I'm trying to build a lot of positive culture and climate in our community this year throughout the year. We had a First Fun Friday. So all staff after dismissal came to the front foyer. There was a cooler of sodas and snacks, and everyone got to talk and have some laughs before they started their weekend journey. So that was a really well-attended Friday, this past Friday. Watch out for the monthly Molly Stark check-in. So this is going to begin with our 5th graders. And this is an opportunity for our learners to share what other grades are learning about. So we have 5th graders going to interview our K through 4th or K through 5 learners and see what they're learning. And that's going to be broadcasted on a video to be put on my Twitter account and Facebook account. So more to come on that, and I'm looking forward to really hearing about the students learning and hearing what the voices say about that. Math update. So our math coach, Carrie Gardner, shared with our staff at our meeting the curriculum and the Go Math program. Ms. Gardner has been assessing students in grades K, 1, and 2 to get a baseline where students are using our district tool, FastBridge. Information will be shared with teachers and the next steps determined. Our literacy update, Madeline Levy is our literacy coach. She continues to collaborate with all of our staff and the reading interventionists, special educators, focusing on the new Reading Street curriculum and foundations. Madeline works daily with K through 3 teachers and implementing that foundations program. Interventionists have been diligently assessing learners. They are so excited to start teaching some learners now after their assessing is done. So they're starting their small group work and focusing on seeing some progress in reading. When I begin my supervision and evaluation process, one thing I am going to be focused on is a literacy lesson for classroom teachers. So that is something that I have communicated to the whole staff. That's what I will ask them to provide, a literacy lesson, the full lesson, and that's they're looking forward to that. Our positive behavior intervention support reviewed some of the frameworks of the PBIS recently. There was a conversation on how to improve the recognition of learners being safe, kind, respectful, and responsible. I thank Kathy Hunt and Carrie Gardner for their dedication and time and commitment to improving our system. Learners are earning stars, and then they get to cash in and go to the cart to buy something that they like. Jessa Ordway, our district social and emotional curriculum supports of our PBIS team, is discussing next steps with our team and is coming to a staff meeting to really start building relationships and trust with our teachers and how can we do better in supports of behavior and in some trauma situations with our students. NEC, I have a NEC report for you. So they're really excited about this. They have all 18 learners have been accessing general education so far at Molly Stark. Many of the learners enjoy being in their general education classrooms and thrive off of peer interaction opportunities. A few classroom peers have volunteered to help us with reverse inclusion to help build on the learners' social and communication skills. Learners are utilizing augmentative and alternative communication technology devices in order to better access the curriculum in the NEC classrooms. I've seen them walking in the hallways and they have their devices with them and they utilize them daily. There are 19 paraprofessionals and each of them have worked extremely hard to collect data, make informed decisions, and set the learners up for safety and success. The organization and professionalism of the lead teachers and paraprofessionals have led to significant decreases in challenging behaviors, such as bolting, non-compliance, loud vocals, etc. So we've eliminated those behaviors. Communication between general educators and the NEC team has been very positive. We have conducted over 10 IEP meetings so far this year and are extremely pleased with the involvement of administrators, teachers, and families. And this report was from Alina Heim, our coordinator of the NEC program, and I thank her for this. We continue to develop our trauma-informed practice, and our staff continues to learn and monitor how this program can begin successfully. We are carefully creating the content and context of the program to share with families. 611 staff have been utilized daily to support learners who are experiencing some difficulty acclimating to classroom routines and procedures. I am pleased, 2 weeks ago, and I had a lot of conversation with Superintendent about our Vermont State Statute 16 VSA 1481, which outlines requirements for school fire and emergency preparedness drills. In accordance with this statute, Molly Stark, an early education program, participated in a joint stage 1, 2, and 3 emergency drill on September 27th. This was only for staff. We did not have any learners during this process because we have never done a stage 3, and we wanted to see what the stage 3 would look like. This practice drill was supported by our local law enforcement partners and administration at Grace Christian School. That's where our stage 3 evacuation is, at the Grace Christian School. We had a successful drill and learned from the experience. The practice drill meets our requirement to drill our stage 2 and 3 protocols once annually, and we will continue to practice our stage 1 evacuation drills monthly throughout the year. On a good note with our community, Bennington Subaru donated 150 brand new hardcover books to Molly Stark. All books are excellent and science books award winners. Allison Hoffman selected several of the books to place in the library for all of our learners. All the other books were given to the classroom teachers to distribute to their libraries. And I had some of the titles: How a Science Project Helps One Family and the Planet, Many, The Diversity of Life on Earth, and I think that's Iqbal and His Ingenious Idea. So very interesting titles. I haven't read any of the books yet, but hopefully I can at some point. As far as our community, we continue to do the Veggie Van Gogh program, the backpack program. We have daycare. Daycare is at its max. We have after-school programming. Average learners a day, 120 this year. Our size tripled in the amount of after-school participants from last year. We also have about 17 paras. There are 15 different clubs to choose from during the week. So French is a club that's new, violin, yoga, Zumba, and many more. So the clubs change every day. One club, if the clubs are filled, we have recess I think Tuesdays and Thursdays, and those are filled. Kids are outside playing after school every day. It's wonderful having them here. They're happy, they have their supper, and then they go home. So it's been a really great experience, and I applaud Allison Hoffman, who has taken this job, first year time, and having it being so well enrolled and having to deal with all the bus situations, and she's doing a great job. I really am proud of her, and I'm thankful to have her working that. I think I'm good. PTG, we had a meeting the other night, and they have rolled out their first fundraiser, Yankee Candle, very successful. It was one of their highest fundraising opportunities, and we are going to be doing the Harvest Fest on October 21st, 5:30 to 7, where families can come, have fun, do some fun activities, and get ready for the more fall fun. So again, Molly Stark provides opportunities for learners of all ages and stages to reach their potential. I am grateful to be part of this community of learners, parents, staff, administration, board members, and other community resources. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I have one more thing. So Principal Foster asked me to present this card to the board from the Woodford School. And it acknowledges the Big E 2019. And there are many fun things to read about in the card about their field trip to the Big E. And I can speak too that these experiences are unforgettable for these learners and how important it is that they can access that. So I'll pass that around. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any questions for Principal Basic?
Yeah, I've had, I'm just curious, how long have you been a principal here?
This is my first year.
Oh,
Yep.
welcome.
I'm assistant principal and Springfield last.
Donna, would you come back up to the mic? Thank you very much.
This is my first year.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Am I correct, did we discuss at one time that the expansion of the NECC program was going to bring some students back into our local area that were educated off-site? Is that working? Do I have that wrong?
Well,
Not that.
the only ones who offer residential NECC students, and there's no intention to bring them back. They're really at the best facilities for their needs, but we have expanded twice now the size of the NEC program in this building alone, so, which does keep students in district and we're not contracting with other districts for day placement programs.
Thank you.
And so, Principal Basic, I just want to say I appreciate one thing that your report and the written report that you provided as well very nicely captures is how complex the job of a principal is. It's not just overseeing the academics, but you talk about academics for students, behaviors for students, the PBIS efforts, student and staff safety, staff cohesion, and sort of taking care of each other. You talked about after-school activities. You talked about nutrition for these learners. There's a lot that goes into schooling, and it's not just straight academics. So I appreciate that you were able to capture so much of what this school is doing and what you and your staff are doing in this report. So I just want to acknowledge that. Thank you very much for that.
And it wouldn't happen only because I have the dedicated staff members here at this school. They're incredibly dedicated. They care so much about the kids and what the kids need. So it's really, this community is amazing, and I applaud it, and I'm so proud to be part of it.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you. Moving on then to the superintendent's report.
Evening. First thing I want to talk about is the two of the former school districts that make up the Union Elementary District had tuition agreements that allowed students to attend from outside of the district to a school, Shaftesbury or Woodford. Those were the two that had tuition agreements. Primarily, we see this coming from North Bennington, which is a non-operating school district and pays tuition for their students to attend either the village school or many other schools. So there are students from North Bennington who are attending Shaftesbury and have attended Woodford in the past. So this year we have one attending, two attending, at Molly, here at Molly. So depending on how we interpret this merger. So it's my feeling that because two of these districts had this and now we're merged, that all should have this a tuition agreement that we accept students from tuition on a seat available basis. Like we wouldn't take students and no one from within this Union Elementary District would get pushed aside. But what I'm asking is that the board should, if you're in agreement with me, that this really should have been offered to all the schools in our district, then perhaps the board should consider taking a vote that they're in agreement with that, so it can be memorialized in our minutes in case there was any question to it. So if we look at the policy, Bennington never took tuition students, and Pownell didn't take tuition students, but we've certainly had requests over the past, so I think this
Yes,
is an
we have.
opportunity that we should
Correction.
that we should consider.
Correction, Pownell has taken.
Not from North Bennington, I don't believe.
Oh, not from-
No,
no.
no.
Question. So in the past, we had requests from North Bennington to attend Bennington schools, but we just didn't have the capacity.
We didn't have the capacity because, there was no tuition agreement with, or in the policy for any school other than Shaftesbury and Woodford. So
And-
I feel it should apply to all the students, all the schools in the district on a space available basis.
I agree. Was it, and maybe I should know this, but I don't remember ever talking about it, so that's why I probably don't. But was it a board decision for those, for Bennington and Pownell
So-
to not?
I imagine that it would have been,
tuition agreement?
yes. And in the case of Bennington, it probably was a capacity issue at that point.
Yeah, and like Molly being as big as it is, but we were able to have capacity this
Right.
year for those two students.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I would be willing to put that motion.
To extend tuition agreements to all the elementary schools in the new Union Elementary District.
Yes.
Specific to
What
North
he
Bennington.
said.
No, it could come from anywhere,
Okay.
really. And they pay the state, it could come from Searsburg, which is a non-operating school district. So, and I think Reedsboro might do some tuition basis too, because they, depending on where you live in Reedsboro, it might be closer to go to Woodford Elementary than to go there. And I think Woodford has had
Yes.
students from Searsburg, right? So, and it's what's 12,300 is this year's tuition rate. So that's the check that the other town would send to our school district for that seat.
And
Would that work for Arlington as well when things go forward with Arlington's participation? in the
Well,
SU?
probably not, because the way the merger with Arlington's going to work, they're going to come under the supervisory union, but not the Union Elementary District. So what you do here would not apply to Arlington.
Sure.
Yeah.
And they're still operating, aren't they?
They're still-
They're operating
Yeah.
schools,
Yeah.
so.
Oh, I see, so the
It's only now.
caveat
So this
is
really,
non-operating.
yeah, to not, so under the merger, it would really be a distance, but Sandgate is going to come under our SU, and they're non-operating, so I suppose they would have the option to come here too. But, so any non-operating school district in Vermont.
I'll second.
So, Jayla, could you repeat the motion that's on the floor, please? Or you could ask the superintendent to
I make a
repeat.
motion to expand the ability to
Accept.
to accept tuition for students to come to any of the elementaries within the SVU ESD, and past just Woodford and Shaftesbury.
Okay. Scott, okay.
Second.
Any further discussion on this?
I think non-operating, right?
No.
That was missed.
I guess that's a good point, Richard, thank you. I mean, I suppose there could be operating school districts that allow, I'm not aware of any, that allow students to go school choice and that they would then provide that, but I don't know why an operating school district would agree to that. So, but we could just say school districts in Vermont that,
Offer school choice.
that offer school choice.
So I just amend to just add that in the
Okay.
beginning.
Scott, are you still seconding
Because
the
I'm
motion?
never going to be able
Okay.
to remember what I said.
Any further discussion on this? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you.
So along this same line, as we continue to unpack how this merger works, some future items that we should begin to have discussions, this board should have to study and discuss. There's a hold harmless for 2 years. Everything stays the same for 2 years, but we're going to be 6 months into those 2 years really soon. So we should be starting to have discussions about things such as school choice. Does this board want that? Do you want parents to have the ability to send their children to any school within the supervisory union, either on a lottery basis or, whatever mechanism that we create for someone, to go, and as long as they agree to transportation on their own, because the cross-town transportation would just be a nightmare. But school choice is one thing that we should begin to have talks. And changes to school attendance zones. They're going to, that, we can't change it for 2 years, but we may start to think like, well, it might be easier for somebody who's living really on the Shaftesbury line to come to school here, or vice versa. And are we going to allow that? So we have to, I think we should start to have those discussions sooner rather than later, because that 2-year moratorium will come to an end. And we should have a discussion, and you've heard this mentioned before, and by others, not just myself, that will we continue to operate the 6 schools of the Union Elementary District essentially the same? Do we want to consider the idea of magnet schools that would create, say, for example, Bennington Elementary School has a specialty in the arts, and students, coupled with school choice, people could go there. So we have the opportunity, now that we're one school district, to think about and have discussions, debate it, whether we should be running all the schools the same. And there's some great opportunity here. And it's not without, creating some anxiety with people that, we love our school and our town just the way it is. And maybe that's, at the end of the day, how things will be, but we should at least explore the opportunity that maybe we don't have to run every school exactly. And I don't have all those ideas. I think we put it on agendas and we have discussions, maybe invite public input and see how we want to do that. And as we continue to look at this, I'm sure there's going to be more things that I'm going to bring to you that I'm thinking about, we need to discuss this. There's been a few things that have come up that, and Renee is smiling there, that and the tuition is one of them, but that we hadn't thought about when the merger, that, things that are unique to one district and not in another. So we'll continue to address that. I want to make you aware that we still have some open positions, including a special education position at Monument Elementary, which is having an impact on services. It's been a struggle to fill all the positions that have been open. I think there's also a para opening also there that is impacting services. So Assistant Superintendent Laura Boudreau and I met again this morning with the special ed director to strategize what we can do and whether we need to shift resources within the district to kind of spread the pain a little of the open positions and not just at one school until we can fill it. But I want the board aware of it in case you're hearing any complaints. I think I want to talk to you about at the end of operation, the Pownell School Board transferred their buses to the town of Pownell to be used for field trips and all that. We still don't have an organized mechanism to use those buses, and we're kind of in a bit of a standstill. There's been 3 field trips that have used those buses so far, and today I had to tell the principals that we're freezing using those buses for the time being until we can figure out who owns the drivers of those buses and the mechanism for paying them. So what happened is the town owns the buses, but they don't employ any drivers. Neither do we. We don't have any drivers or employment, and we would prefer not to hire drivers. It would count on our workman's comp, and it would split liability issues of we're putting a driver in a rented bus. We still have no rates from the town of Pownell for what those buses would cost to use. So the 3 field trips that went, we are going to find a mechanism to pay those 3 drivers within our HR so that, they certainly don't, work for free. But until it would be our preference that if the town is going to provide the buses, that they would employ drivers, and we would contract with them like any other vendor to have the bus do a field trip at a rate that they give us that is reasonable and provides for the use of the bus with a driver in it. But because where it gets complicated, if it doesn't operate that way, say Shaftesbury wants to use that bus, well, if I only have a driver from Pownell to drive that bus, it's just so. I'm confident that we can work out a solution, because we certainly want to give our, Donna passed out a card today on a wonderful field trip. And one of the things that our elementary schools experience is the field trips have to come back early, often, because DO4's buses need to do the sports runs at the end of the day, and that's where the priority goes. Or they need to come back for the high school, the first run of the high school. So you're on a field trip and you got to leave at 1:45, wherever you are, because you got to be back. So it's a great opportunity for us, but we don't, I had to speak for Renee, but we don't really want to take on the liability of hiring bus drivers too.
So those 3 field trips that we have and those 3 drivers,
Yeah.
how were they chosen, and like what all the background checks and all that stuff done for those
It was done
drivers?
independent of the central office, so we have no idea. I believe they were drivers that may have worked for Pownell before.
Yes.
When they owned the buses.
Yes.
But we also have concerns not about background checks, because they were their drivers before, and I think that's how HR is going to be able to pay them, because at one point they were in our payroll. But we're not sure that Pownell is carrying the same level of liability insurance on their buses that we require under our regular bus contract. We don't think that they do, but we don't until we know that for sure. I think, what did you say, it's a $5 million limit on our we require on DO4, and I'm not aware if the town is carrying that level of liability insurance. So just in case you hear, particularly Cindy, let you know that, and Angie, that, the big bad superintendent said the buses are frozen.
We've heard.
I mean, I don't think we really have a choice, because if we're a combined district, and I think that availability needs to be made to all the schools
Right.
too. And, not just one in particular, especially if those are not
But
owned by the
Cindy and I have spoken, Renee and Cindy, so I think you're in agreement with us that if the town's going to have the buses, they should hire the drivers that drive their buses.
We have a driver. We're just, it's a misunderstanding with the select board, and I will be attending their meeting again on Thursday.
Anything you can do to help this out from our perspective, and we also would like to know what the level of liability insurance they're carrying for, not insurance on like the bus physically themselves, but if, an accident happened carrying precious cargo, so. And the figure I was told today is we require $5 million with our other contractors. So if they're going to become a bus contractor, I would assume we'd want them to carry the same level of liability insurance.
Can we give, or should we give Cindy a message as the board to convey to the select board that, I'm sensing at least the majority of this table is excited by the prospect of being able to allow these kids to go on field trips or things that are not limited by our current relationship with DO4, that makes this really exciting for us, but there's a burden for that benefit that Pownell would need to put forth of, the drivers, the insurance.
And what the
all those
rate,
things.
we don't have a rate sheet from them for what it costs to rent the bus.
Rate, so, I think we would have to approve a message, an official board message, but would that be helpful, perhaps?
I think what you just said could be a motion to authorize Cindy to speak on the board on those issues.
Should I make that motion now?
Sure.
Or
Sure.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize Cindy to convey the excitement of this board and the prospect of having this relationship with Pownell, under the assumption that they get the things worked out with the SU
Yeah.
as far as insurance, rates,
Drivers.
background checks, drivers, all those things. But we're excited to have this as an opportunity for the kids in the community.
So
I
that's
do
the motion.
know, I do know the driver has been cleared, everything. She's even been
Yeah.
through everything is just, it's held up.
Right. But that's, when you say the direction is, that's part of the issue. Who's going to do all of that going forward? The town?
Yes,
Yeah.
they should.
Yeah, I
They own the bus,
Right.
and they should be,
Right.
you know.
To our standards.
That's
To our standard, yeah.
So there's a motion on the floor to empower Cindy to speak as to
second.
the needs of the board. We have Chael seconded. Thank you. Any further discussion on this? Great. Hearing none, all those in favor of empowering Cindy in the way I described, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And it passes. Very good.
They'll love to hear from me.
Go get him, Cindy.
When's the meeting, Cindy?
Thursday night.
Thursday night.
It just seems like a win-win.
Yeah,
Sure.
Thursday. Professional development activities that I want to make you aware of, and I'm going to ask the Assistant Superintendent and the Director of Curriculum Instruction to come next month and give this board a full presentation on the literacy instruction efforts that are going on in this district. I think it's really amazing. It's a big amount of the money from our coordinated federal program grants that are going to Hill for Literacy is a term that you may hear, but just a couple of highlights that I want to talk to is so in two of the elementary schools, Bennington and Molly Stark, there is they are doing in-school training there with the staff to provide professional learning on the use of data and technology to support reading instruction. And we all know how critical reading, and as early as we can get students reading to grade level, is so important to everything else they learn. So these sessions include use of digital literacy workbooks to guide tiered instruction decisions. And then going out to the other schools, there's to provide a consistent knowledge and a common language in instruction, which is so important that we get all our teaching staff talking on the same. There's a cohort group of 20 instructors from Wally Stark, Monument, Bennington Elementary, Pownell, Shaftesbury, and Woodford Hollow. They're going to meet 10 times this year for 2 hours each time after school. And then we will do another group of 20 because there was more desire to go into this than we had the capacity to do. So we'll keep committing our coordinated federal program money to this project. There's two other sections to this literacy instruction that I want you to make aware of. There's also literacy coaches and literacy leaders who are also going to meet 10 different times this year to continue their instruction so that they can become the coach and leader in each school for how literacy and reading instruction work. And there's also the Union Elementary administrators are also meeting with this group as a cohort group, and they'll also meet 10 times throughout the course of this year for a minimum of 2 hours. And as we met with the principals today, not trying to get everybody at a meeting on the same day at the same time, so there is opportunity to make up if they miss a meeting or something like that, because it's really critical work. I'm excited by what I have seen going on this, so I want to share this with the whole board. But rather than me tell you what I'm learning, I want the people who are involved in writing the grants to bring it here and in doing this important but difficult work to your next meeting. And just wanted to give you a little highlight on it. And, it's, as we look at teacher education programs throughout the area where we're getting our core of teachers, this is something that isn't always taught in schools. And so why do we do that professional development in literacy here is because we're not, we want to get everybody on the same page with the same common language, because they're coming to us from so many different schools with diverse backgrounds. And all for the goal to get our students reading, as many of them, all of them, as early as possible to grade level. That's my report.
Great. Thank you. Any questions for the superintendent? All right. Thanks, Jim. Thank you very much. And nothing so much in the way of the chair's report, but just pointing out if you're not taking the opportunity to read the reports from the building principals, there's a lot of exciting things that are happening in our schools. you can tell that there are different cultures, there are different kind of foci in the different schools, but the themes are emerging. The themes are dedicated, enthusiastic staff, students responding to creative ways for delivering instruction, and building communities within these schools. And it's really exciting to hear of all the great things that are happening across the SVU ESD. So we get a lot in our packets. Hopefully we're reading all of it, but if we're not, hopefully we're reading those at least, because those are really great. And just my thanks to all the staff and administrators who are making that happen.
It's really fun to see, hearing about the interventionists for literacy, hearing what Mr. Polkey just said, knowing about what happened in Shaftesbury when we added the math interventionist and how quickly numbers turned around or started to really improve. And so to see that, the actions of this board, the actions of our dedication to giving the staff what they need, and then seeing there be results is awesome. And I'm all for continuing that stuff.
Excellent. And also, just to say before I close the chair report, our next meeting is going to be Tuesday, November 12th at Monument Elementary. That's the next in alphabetically.
What time?
So we'll be beginning the meeting at 6:30, but I think we'll do a building tour beginning at 6. So we'll ask Principal Cawley to host us at Monument.
Can I just please ask that, since last meeting, we decided to start at 6, and then there was an email while I was on vacation with no reasoning. I just think it needs to be consistent if we decide that we're going to start a meeting at 6 or at 6:30, that we keep it there unless there's an emergency. And I'd like to also say that I think any principal or any teacher is more than welcome to come to our meetings at any time. I want them to feel like they're open and that they can come. Not just because we're at Molly or just because we're at Pownell. We're supposed to be combined together, working together. And I think a lot of people still feel very separated, and I'd like all the principals and all the teachers to come if they want to come.
Agreed.
There is like a disconnect. All of a sudden, we're at a different building with a different principal, and we're used to being in Pownell, and I was really disappointed to find out that all the principals aren't attending. I mean, you can write a piece of paper up, but to hear,
So
I don't know.
Were they officially
Yeah,
asked to come?
I think it's important that the principals, the resource of the principal is at parents' night, community nights, and not necessarily the report to the board. But you heard the incredible amount of work that a principal has to do. And if I don't have to require them to come here a night, I think that goes a long way with principals for how much we have them, we already are asking from
I just want
them
them
to
to feel
do.
welcome, that they can come if they'd like to.
It's a public meeting. They're welcome. The idea is you have the principal who's hosting the building comes and gives the presentation. They can come. I do not tell them not to come.
So just a
But they may feel it that way.
point,
Yeah.
well, I guess that's a topic for discussion is have we done something as a board, or has there been any action that makes it so what you're hearing in Pownell is that they don't feel welcome, or, I mean, I haven't.
I want to know if they really said that. Is that, you're telling me the principal said he's not welcome?
I just,
Because I most certainly did not tell him that.
no. I just want them to feel like they're welcome and that they can come.
Well, I mean,
I mean, personally, if I was a principal, I'd say, oh, I don't have to go to a meeting, I'm not gonna.
and I would, you know.
But it's just, this
I mean, I
is,
feel like if they didn't want just to write a report every month, if they want to come, they can come.
Sure.
That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
trust me, I've been on the board 20 years, they'll write the report.
No, okay.
And in case there's any question at all, as a board, we welcome all administrators, building staff, teachers, anyone associated with it, whether it's a parent, a student, an older sibling of a student, a concerned grandparent of a student.
I'd love to see more people.
Yeah.
You see all the empty
That's just,
chairs.
it's been a lot of confusion with the combined.
Well, I think part of the reason why we're making the effort to visit each of the schools is to cut down on that idea that everyone needs to schlep to Bennington to attend a meeting. Like we
Unfortunately, we decided, which means the first 3 meetings were here.
Right.
Yeah, and that's fine. I
That's
mean,
fine. We all want that.
I think going to each building is important.
In terms of the start time, you absolutely, I misspoke. We did talk about a 6 o'clock start time. So it will be a 6 o'clock start, unless I'm misremembering that, but it's
Didn't we start with the tour at 6?
6 o'clock start time with the tour, 6:30 with the meeting itself.
Right.
So, yeah.
And the 15-minute pushback was my request, and we talked about it at the end of the last meeting, I believe, but I don't know what was decided.
Yeah.
so.
So again, as part of our learning process, we have,
Jayla had asked about, because of soccer, if we could push back this one meeting.
This one
to
meeting.
Because
6:45.
after this month, soccer's over, so I'm good. It was just this one meeting I had asked.
and part of the learning process of the meetings is that some of us are coming from boards that are used to starting at 7, some of us from boards used to starting at 5, and so we're trying
5:30.
to 5:30, we're trying to find that middle ground, right?
Lunch is coming.
Which, yes, it is, yes.
3 o'clock,
3 o'clock.
6:30, and 7. Those are the
right.
formal meeting times of all the boards.
Yeah. So again, our next one is the second Tuesday in November, which is the at Monuments. That starts the building tour. So, last agenda item is number 10, FYI, so we have the student enrollment, which is in there, budget status report, information about the field trip to the Big E, and we should all take a look at the group before we split. And then there are the policies that were attached, that's 115011, which I think we'll discuss at a later time. So, with that, we've exhausted our agenda, can I please have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye. Abstentions? And we are adjourned. Thank you.